Have you ever got stuck wondering what to do in your left hand whilst you're perhaps playing chords or a melody in your right hand? Maybe you're just playing single notes at the moment and you're not sure where to go from there. I've got some exercises for you to try to help give you a few idea starters and learn some foundational left hand concepts and skills. So for exercise 1, we're going to be using the root, the fifth and the octave of each chord you're on. And this really is a must-know thing. We use this position all the time to create all kinds of patterns in the left hand. Let me show you that properly. So what do I mean by root, fifth and octave? Well, you do have to know some basic major and minor chords first. If you're playing C major, for example, look at the basic root position. Always use the root position to do this when you're still learning to help you find what you need. We label the 3 notes in the chord. The first note, C, is the root. The middle note, E, is the third. And the top note, G, is the fifth. The root is where the chord begins. The third is 3 note names along, C, D, E. And then the fifth is 5 note names along from the root. C, D, E, F, G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I do explain all that theory properly in another video. We're not doing that here, so I'll link that one below. So for this pattern, we just use the root and the fifth, the outside notes of a root position shaped chord. But then we want the octave, which is that same root note again, C, above that. So this is actually handy because it's the same for any minor chord as well. So we just did C major and got rid of the E, but if we were doing C minor, we just have to get rid of the new middle note, E flat. This position would be the same for C major and C minor. So if I was to do this on a D major or minor chord, well, there's a D major root position, major or D minor, and we're getting rid of whichever middle note we're using, just using the outside 2 notes, the root and the fifth, and play the root again up here. Or if it was a B major or minor, there's B major, get rid of the middle one, and play the B again up here. Now it's a really good thing to practice finding this position for all the major and minor chords, or at least the ones that you know at the moment. We really do use these positions all the time, so it's good to work towards having them kind of in your vocabulary so you can just find them easily without having to think too much. So for every one, we can use fingers 5 and then 2 and then finger 1, the thumb, on top. And if you're struggling to reach all of them at the same time, don't worry, you can let go of the low note, which sounds great when you're using the pedal. If you struggle using the pedal, I have a video dedicated to that I recommend watching next. I'll link that below. And you want to make sure that when you're playing this, and especially when you're moving through it, that you don't hold your hand too far back. Otherwise, you'll end up doing something very awkward. You need to keep this finger forward so you can just relax and move from left to right. Make sure you're keeping your wrist nice and loose. Let me play that example for you slowly. Remember, when you do this yourself, whatever you're playing, you've got to try and figure out how your right hand melody interacts with the left hand pattern. Now, if we compare that to just using single notes, it sounds so much fuller and more pianistic, even with just a simple pattern like that. So a lot of the time you can just break up the notes like that. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and... That one there isn't necessary, that's just a quick passing chord, but you can do that with just the octaves or just the single notes. And sometimes you may also find yourself needing to adjust the rhythm a little bit. So when I got to the end of that phrase, I played the rhythm slightly different there because it just didn't feel right to do it that way with the melody. That just didn't feel right, so I adjusted it a bit. And don't forget, sometimes it may be better just to use the root, or the root and fifth, or just the root and octave if that kind of feels right for what you're playing. Sometimes your right hand kind of may be in the way of reaching up to the octave anyway. And it doesn't just have to be when you're playing melodies, we can use this kind of pattern when we're playing chord rhythms too. Using these positions again, the root, the fifth and the octave, the next useful thing to try is going back and forth between the two top notes like this. Now you can go constantly back and forth like this as chords change. But you can also stop the flow of that at any point to create different sounding patterns, and you can choose how to do that in a way that just suits the music best. So that particular song, that's Fields of Gold by the way, kind of sounds nicer with those little gaps in between. So to practice that, you want to make sure that as you're rocking back and forth between these notes, that you're not just doing it with your fingers like that. You want to get a little bit of movement in your wrist. It's just kind of subtle, but you're kind of rocking the weight of your hand back and forth. Now I did have a better example for this and I've completely forgotten what it was. So I'm going to play this instead. Let me know if you recognise it. The third thing to try is kind of like the first one, but with a higher top note. And this is really good because it gives us a nice wide sound. Again, this is a really common left-hand device that's really good to know. So let's look at a C minor chord. This time we're going to use the third of the chord. So if we look at a root position to find which notes we need, the third is the middle note in a chord. If it was C major, it would be the E, but it's C minor, so it's the E flat. But we're not playing it like that. We're going to play the third up an octave higher, up here instead. So instead of root fifth octave, it's root fifth, the third up here. So we take the middle one and just put it up here. So that's just another way of spreading out the three notes in the chord, voicing them. If it was a G major chord, we look at those three notes and we take the middle one in root position and we play that an octave higher. Now these are much harder to reach. Some of them I can just about reach, some of them on the piano I can't. So we will definitely be breaking these notes up. Like I said earlier with the octaves, using the pedal, keep your wrist nice and relaxed and make sure to get your weight moving from left to right like that. Or in the C minor, that would look like this. So let's hear what that sounds like in a piece of music. This really is a great voicing. It gives us a big professional sound as it covers a wide range on the piano and uses one of each note of the chord. So we get a full sense of the sound, the quality of that chord. And that potentially frees up our right hand to do other things as well. And we don't need to use that all the time for every chord. It's just a tool to have in your toolkit. Sometimes we might just want to use the octave on some chords anyway. That might be a better option depending on what you're playing and how you think it all sounds together. This is a bit more technically challenging than the last one. So again, I do recommend practicing the left hand by itself, going through all the different chords that you know. You just want to make sure that you're feeling like you're not overstretching to reach that top note. Make sure that you are moving your hand to reach it, not stretching to reach it. You might have noticed when I played that example that a couple of chords did something slightly different. So when I got to the E flat chord, there's an E flat major chord, I used the G up here, like normal, but then I played one more note after that. And the song was arranged like this because it filled a gap in the melody. The melody wasn't doing anything there, so there was kind of like a response in the left hand. It may have felt empty rhythmically if we'd have just done that. And the note that we added on was actually the D on top, which would make this an E flat major 7 chord. It's just adding a note on top of the E flat major. And then on the G major chord at the end, we did something different again, which is actually the last thing in this video. So you'll see that later. Just quickly, if this video is helpful for you so far, please click the like button. It really helps me out and it helps other people learning like you find the video too. Many thanks. Earlier, we looked at moving these two notes back and forth whilst in this root 5th octave position. So we're going to try something similar to that, but this time we're going to alter the top note. Now there's different ways to do this, but this is the kind of thing that I mean. So there, I just used the 3rd from the chord again, this is a C minor, on top. So all I'm doing there is really pivoting off this middle note G. Till it comes round again. So if we're counting, it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So all the ands would be on that G. And that works with major chords too. But it often sounds really nice as well with major and minor chords to use the 2nd. Listen to this. So the 2nd is just a whole step above the root of the chord. So if we look at this high root, so that's closer to the note we're going to find, it's just a whole step above there. So if it was C, that would be D. Here's a major chord. And here's a minor chord. Now this doesn't work 100% of the time in music, but quite often it sounds good. Sometimes people might call that the 9th as well, because if you're referencing this note as the root, the octave is 8, so 8, 9. And sometimes we can mix and match as well. So using the 2nd, because it's an extra note other than one of the main notes in the chord, we can call it an add to chord. That adds a bit of extra colour and sort of flavour to the chords, which can really sweeten things up sometimes. So here's what that can sound like. So for the A minor, I use the 3rd. And then for the F major chord, I use the 2nd. So F is 1, which makes G 2. And you can hear how using that G, it just adds a little something special to the sound of that chord. So all this kind of stuff and going beyond this will become much easier to learn when you have at least a basic grasp of some of the chord theory and the terminology behind it. I've linked some recommended theory videos down below in the description. I also have some really clear and in-depth theory guides available on the website you can check out too below to help you learn scales, chords, and more. Lastly then, this one is a little bit more advanced, but it is fun to practice even just the left hand by itself. For this one, we're going to go over the top, and I'm going to show you two different ways to do this. It's either going to be like this or this. It's either just using the notes from the chord, or we're going to use that second again as well. And like I say, this one is a little bit more difficult, and a good place to start using this in music when you're a beginner is in the gaps between sections of the melody, so nothing's happening in the right hand at the same time. So the two ways to do this, let me show you with F. We're going to start off with root fifth octave. And from there, we're going to go over the top. Now, the first way to do it is to finish off the root position shape starting from the octave. So we get root, fifth, octave, third, fifth. So you should be able to see that one already because you already know the root position shape. And if it was F minor, it would be an F minor shape there instead, okay? So finger-wise, it's always going to be 5, 2, 1 in the left hand, and then depending on the chord and what feels comfortable, it's either going to be 3, 1 or 2, 1 from there. Now, I think that should cover most cases. Sometimes if there's something else going on, you may need to adjust that though. And then the other version was to use root fifth octave again, but instead of going third, fifth above that, we're going to go second, third. So if it was an F major chord, we're going to go G, A in this case. So that's root, fifth, octave, and then second, third. So with a major chord, that's going to look like whole steps. But with a minor chord, that's going to look like a whole step and then a half step. Let's look at the example again slowly. And that 2-3 movement on a G major chord was what I played earlier at the end of that passage from Song from Secret Garden. And finger-wise for this, it's either going to be 2 over and then thumb under, but that wouldn't work very well for the minor version. So for that one, it's going to be 3 over and then 2. So you get to here, finger 3 over and then finger 2. They're going to be the best options, I think. So either 3, 2 or 2, 1. And again, technique-wise, to start you off with that crossover, it's all about moving, just like the other examples, it's all about moving your weight across the piano like this. Keeping your fingers nice and relaxed as you turn. And if you're doing the arpeggio, it's just a bigger movement through the chord. Same kind of idea really, but don't stretch to the notes. Make sure you're moving enough so your fingers don't have to overstretch, because that's when things are going to get awkward and clunky. So I hope you have fun with that one, because it gives us such a nice pianistic sound to play with. And I hope that was helpful. Next, you should check out one of these videos to learn some really kind of soulful chord patterns and to learn to start improvising with chord patterns here. Let me know below if you have any questions, and if you subscribe, make sure to hit the notifications bell so you get notified when there's a new video. Thanks for watching.